Bitcoiners, what is up? It's CK, and I am sitting across from Bernardo Magnani, the head of product and co-founder over at Lastbit. Welcome to Bitcoin Magazine. How's it going?
It's going great. It's great to be here with you. It's honestly kind of like a small dream come true to be able to become relevant enough to be hosted on one of your podcasts, man. So thanks a lot for having me.
Well, hey, Lastbit has been grinding hard, building fantastic products, and today is a really big day for you guys. Bernardo, why don't you kind of give the audience the announcement about what Lastbit is about to drop?
Okay, today I wanna give the exciting news that we're launching two Bitcoin Lightning Power apps in Europe. This will be the two first apps in Europe that will have full Euro and Lightning interoperability. We're super pumped about this. The first one is Lastbit Lite, and Lastbit Cards. The first is featuring an IBAN account, so basically people can move in and out of IBAN accounts through Lightning. And the second one is Lastbit Cards, which features the first ever debit card powered by Lightning, which we're super excited to say that's the first.
So, kind of going into the different applications, why don't you kind of tease out the differences between Lastbit Card and Lastbit Lite?
Yeah, for sure. I can actually start probably first with Lastbit Lite. So Lastbit Lite again is this payment application that features an IBAN account. So basically this means that people can move in and out between Bitcoin Lightning and IBANs. So a few of the things people can do with Lastbit Lite. Number one, of course, they can send and receive payments in Bitcoin, both on chain and via Lightning, of course, like a traditional wallet. And also they can very interestingly pay euros via the Lightning Network, right? So basically we're using Bitcoin Lightning as a rails to euros. And at the moment, I think one of the things I'm very interested about and very excited about is this actually will hopefully allow people to use Bitcoin more in their day-to-day lives because they can interact with people that don't necessarily use Bitcoin. Bitcoiners will be able to send payments in Bitcoin that are receiving euros for people that don't really understand Bitcoin or don't necessarily want to hold it. They would be able to receive Bitcoin from people that don't want to use Bitcoin. Same like send, I'd say send euros and then you receive Bitcoin, which is something we believe it's super cool. Yeah, super excited about. And then we're also on Light, we're featuring an additional thing, this lastbit.me. Again, we were thinking, how can we make Bitcoin more usable and like more understandable? So we are creating this lastbit.me, which is basically like a social profile in which users can receive money both from other Lastbit users instantly, from Lightning accounts instantly, and through, of course, on-chain accounts. The idea is instead of needing to have like a long invoice or a long address, a long wallet, people can just like look for my ID and immediately just find me on this social profile and be able to send money to me. So that's Lastbit Lite. And then the second application we're launching is Lastbit Cards. I'm super pumped about Lastbit Cards. This is literally the first product in Europe, and I think probably the world, that has full interoperability between Bitcoin Lightning and a mainstream payment product. So with Lastbit Cards, users can, of course, make immediate top-ups to a debit card through Lightning. So basically from Bitcoin to card and immediately be able to pay with that. Another cool thing that I really like about what we build is people can actually use the card, use the euro denominated balance to immediately buy Bitcoin Lightning or send Lightning invoices, which is probably one of the coolest things we've managed to build because we're now allowing users to immediately go into Bitcoin Lightning from a mainstream product. Um, so that's kind of like a little bit the gist of cards. Cards also has something that I really like. Of course, we have virtual cards and also physical cards. So users should be able to just go to any, of course, virtual store. They would be able to use that card or physical store, and of course, just come and tap the card, swipe the card, and they will be able to use it.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like this type of a user friendly application is much, much better for onboarding folks than the brokerage style account, right? I feel like before the only way to get into Bitcoin was through an exchange that was really modeled after a
Yeah.
brokerage account. Whereas like now we're starting to see obviously Lastbit, but we also have Strike and several others in the US that
Yep.
LVL, I think, is one of them that they're modeling it much more as a kind of like consumer payments app or a debit card and bank account kind of a UX. And I just think
Yep.
that's so much more approachable to the average person, and it makes Bitcoin so much more approachable.
Absolutely, and that's kind of like what we're going for. That we really want to help this become mainstream, and whatever like people want is what's gonna become mainstream, not what we Bitcoiners have in our minds. The people that have a little bit more experience. So we were trying to figure out a way in which it was like simpler to do, and people just want to be able to very easily jump into the system, jump out of the system, and most importantly, and I think that not necessarily is a sentiment that's felt through people that have more experience, it's also to be useful, right? The first question a lot of my friends that are not necessarily in the space ask me is like, okay, this is great, but like, one, I don't understand it, and two, what can I do with this apart from holding it and probably make some money, or honestly probably lose some money? So that's a little bit the sentiment of most people. So we were trying to cater to also rookies that don't have an idea of how this works, that are curious about it. It should be easy, it should be simple, it should be useful.
Yeah, and on the other side, outside of getting exposure to Bitcoin, right, is the actual payments infrastructure. Like, can you kind of
Absolutely.
talk about using Lightning to send fiat? Again, this is something that Strike has kind of started really
Yeah, absolutely.
pushing as a mindset, and I'm kind of curious, what the last bit experience is like.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I love that you touch on that point because we as a company do believe that Bitcoin has a value, like big underlying value, and that is probably as a payment rail, right? Right now, a lot of people are betting on the asset, on the actual coin, to see what is going to be valuable for. And what we believe it's going to be valuable for is like a vehicle of moving money across the world. So just as a context, right now there's really not a. I mean, we're in 2021, and there's really not a good solution to send money, even in the U.S. Even sending transactions in the U.S. can be very cumbersome. There's not a lot of interoperability, and the reason for this is we're stuck with a payment infrastructure that's from the 70s and like communication protocols that are from the 70s, which is basically Swift, just like a way of sending money and information from bank A to bank B to bank C, and it can be like a route of 20 banks. Of course, the chances of you losing money and just losing a lot, literally losing money, right? Like losing track of that money through the journey is super high. And then comes Bitcoin. No, of course, we all know, all people that are listening know that Bitcoin was supposed to be the peer-to-peer network, but it's not really efficient because it takes a lot of time to settle with the volatility. Then you lose a lot of the slippage of entering and exiting. So now the beautiful thing is we have Lightning that can be used as a settlement infrastructure, right? The tricky part here is that we need to also connect to the traditional financial infrastructure to make it useful, right? So the way we're thinking about this is Lightning will most likely be a settlement infrastructure. And when I say settlement, it's how do you make sure money is transmitted from person A to person B, right? Um,
Yep. So let's talk like about the nuances of doing that, right? So
mhm.
I understand, you're not sending euros on the Lightning Network. What you're doing is you have euros in one place, you're buying Bitcoin, sending that Bitcoin, selling the
Yes,
Bitcoin in the other location because Bitcoin's extremely liquid to the euro and pretty
mhm.
much every other fiat currency.
That's
Um,
right.
and then now you've sold the Bitcoin in the place it needs to go for the euros, and then bam, that person has it. Can you kind
That's
of like,
correct.
did I describe that right? Can you kind of go into the detail on that?
Yeah, no, that's a fair description. So usually the way it works is we think about it as three elements that need to be in place for this to work, right? Uh, One is the actual settlement, which is Lightning again. And the settlement again, just to kind of like be very clear at this point, is how do I make sure a money that I send to someone is actually in that person's ownership? That's one element, and that's Lightning, which is like a super cool thing to do. Then the second thing is how do I enter and exit a fiat market, right? Which is what you described. Basically, I can connect to an exchange. And for example, if I want to send US dollars to Mexico, I need to have some sort of way of changing between US dollars and Bitcoin, and then from Bitcoin to Mexican peso, right? So that's where like exchanges, traditional exchanges play a huge part. And then the third part, which I probably believe it's the hardest part, you need to actually like connect to the final rails, to the traditional financial infrastructure to make it actually useful, right? It's really like not a lot. Well, we believe it's not super valuable to have a balance on a mobile app that you can't really use. It's just basically a number, and you cannot actually use it to buy other things, to even like purchase anything you want to purchase, or to send to anyone that doesn't accept your currency, right? So that's how we think about it. And the full flow, as you describe it, is would be probably from, for example, let's picture a flow from sending. For example, I am gonna give you an example of me. I'm Mexican. I have a lot of credit lines in Mexico, but I don't really have money in Mexico because my salary is in the US. Of course, I have all my checking accounts in US dollars denominated in USD, and I don't have any credit lines here. So with Lastbit, with the type of things we want to enable is I should be able to seamlessly pay from my checking account in the US in US dollars directly to my credit card in Mexico, in Mexican peso, right? With paying very little fees, very little FX fees, and like no latency at all.
So you guys are launching in Europe right now. You're bringing up the example US to Mexico. Can you talk a little bit about plans to expand internationally?
Absolutely. So currently we do have some partnerships in the US. So that's something that we're actively exploring. And then we have two other big markets we're exploring. Again, those other two markets are a little bit more preliminary. Latin America is one. We will most likely try to start with Mexico and Brazil, given the fact that they actually have open banking that's a little bit more developed. And again, if we go back to the 3 points I described, kind of like having an open traditional financial infrastructure is very important for us. And that's the case in Brazil and Mexico. And then the other market, which is now getting a little complicated, is India. That was a market we were looking into very closely. It's a big market. There's a lot of interest of moving money in and out of the country. Unfortunately, now, of course, like there's a lot of movements against Bitcoin again. They're gonna try to make it illegal again. So we'll see what happens. But I'll tell you, we're in for the long run. We are happy to go and see what we can do there. We will probably need a little bit more people in the team to go and actually like build a relationship we would need to in India, but that's a market we're looking into.
Very interesting. I'm kind of curious, what's your opinion on like leveraging stable coins to
Mm-hmm.
kind of like tap into markets that want dollar exposure,
Yep.
but it's difficult to get banking relationships?
Absolutely. I think we are completely open to it. Like I think about the development of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin in the same terms as the internet evolved. And the way I probably see Bitcoin, and this is my personal opinion, is probably going to be like the internet of cryptocurrencies. The internet of blockchain is going to be like the thing that sits in the middle, that's open, that's accessible. And then other things can sit in on the sides that fulfill specific purposes, like intranets in the context of the internet, right? So I do believe like if we can connect into these other protocols, in those other currencies to fulfill specific needs, I don't see any reason why not do it. Absolutely.
Awesome. So I guess kind of going on talking about the details, you're working with MasterCard. I think throughout the industry, we've mostly seen Visa as kind of a partner for
Yep.
crypto. They actually have a built-out crypto program. Why MasterCard?
Actually, it's a funny story. When we started, we were in a position where we had little money. It's very hard to build a cryptocurrency business. So it was very hard to find banking partners that were willing to work with us. We basically went through all the options in Europe. We are a young company, first time founders. We didn't have any relationships to leverage. And the partner we found on the banking side had a very close relationship with MasterCard. So that's kind of like why we started with MasterCard at the moment.
Gotcha. And I mean, MasterCard was open to it, or was it just
Mm-hmm.
kind of part of the relationship? Like, can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it took some maturing. The relationship was not super strong right from the beginning. They were a little scared. There was a lot of scams back in 2017, 2018. So the word Bitcoin, crypto, and all that's associated with blockchain technologies is a little bit scary for traditional payment companies. So we had to work a lot with them, explain them what was the specific flow of funds, how we're gonna like manage risk, manage fraud, manage KYC, how we were gonna make sure that people are basically not doing illegal things with our products. And that took some maturing, some trust. It was a process that took probably 6 months from the first like tentative yes to the final yes, and it's going to production. It was a long journey.
So, Bernardo, here's my last question. Obviously, for applications like Lastbit to win out, you need to compete with similar
Yep,
emerging apps, right? That leverage Lightning in Bitcoin and try to provide a neo banking payments experience.
absolutely.
But on the flip side, you also have to compete with the Revoluts and the Venmos and the
Yep,
PayPals. The traditional kind of payment apps and neobanks that leverage
yep.
proprietary networks instead of a open source network like Lightning and Bitcoin. Uh, can you talk about like how Lastbit plans to add additional value that's kind of undeniable for someone who's
Yep.
not into Bitcoin to want to use this app for their day-to-day fiat interactions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very good question. And I love that you frame it like that because sometimes I hear, hey, you're only competing against Bitcoin companies or specifically Bitcoin Lightning companies. And I think you nail it when you say, like, this is a global payment ecosystem. And by the way, it's a very big market. I think the number I had in mind was like 150 trillion a year it's moved on only international payments. So it's a massive, massive market. And the way we're thinking about like positioning ourselves is try to focus on very specific use cases, very specific payment corridors that make sense and that are underserved. And then the two things we want to really like put solid on the ground as value proposition is one, speed and cost, right? So no latency and very, very cheap. And also a third thing that I believe in are in a very good position to enable. It's enable people to send small quantities of money easily. That today, given the economics of most players, is very, very hard to do.
And can you talk about how Lightning gives Lastbit an advantage over the proprietary players?
Yeah, I think the advantage is probably twofold or threefold. One is again the speed. There's literally no settlement protocol that's open source that's as scalable as Lightning today. Then second, it has to do with a thing of interoperability. It's an open protocol. So I do want to build my product in a way that other people can interact with it, right? In a way that other Lightning companies can actually send and receive payments with us. That's a second thing. And then
Or just an open Lightning user, right? Like you,
absolutely.
if you create a Lightning invoice and I have my own Lightning wallet, I send to that invoice and then boom, that value is in your network now.
Absolutely. And I think actually that's the way our cards application is built. So anyone can just download the card and they can use their own node, they can use their own wallet. Like that's kind of like how we build it. So anyone that doesn't want to like give custody of their assets, they just want to use their own wallet. If they like other wallet or whatever, they can actually use it. So that's a second thing that an open protocol like Lightning allows to do. And the third thing, it has to do with also the ability to send micro payments, small payments, and also payments very fast, like literally stream payments. That's something that no other payment infrastructure is built to today.
Yeah, I think the streaming payments thing that's gonna take time for people to
Yeah,
like catch on,
absolutely.
business models to get built out. But I'm so bullish on like this global interoperable system that can interact with fiat very seamlessly. I think like that. I mean, I personally like I'm one of those Bitcoin bulls that like in the next 5 years the world is going to be a different place because of Bitcoin. Like that's my mentality, and I feel like what the work you're
Absolutely.
doing is doing that, right? Like it's going to take the world by storm, and the payments and banking and value systems they're just not going to be able to compete with this global source system,
I
open
totally agree.
source global system.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, just maybe closing remarks. But I actually come from a very traditional background. I did my MBA. I was in McKinsey. I had an offer to go back. And then when I finally understood what Bitcoin is, and I'm an economist, by the way, so that I had that background of economics, of thinking about monetary policy, money, payments. But then when I finally understood what Bitcoin was and what Lightning enabled, I was like, I need to quit. I need to go. I not go back to Mexico. I need to stay, give it my all, because I believe what you said. Like this is gonna change the world, and not only payments. I believe it's gonna change probably this whole social structure of how we do things.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna stick to payments and finance in the next 5 years, just because I don't want to scare away the no coiners. But if I went deep on what I really felt like, man, Bitcoin's gonna change everything.
I think so, and I think for good. Like I like the community because I think most people I know, at least, I really the world is a little bit unfair, and this can make it a little more fair, at least in principle. And that's something I really really like about this community.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Bernardo, why don't you plug where people can learn more about Lastbit, find out more about you,
Absolutely.
and maybe even give a last word?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find all the information about us and download the apps at lastbit.io. Again, it's lastbit.io. Um, and again, I'm in closing remarks. Let's keep on believing. This community is amazing. I think we're working on something that's really powerful, really amazing. I think now we're getting validation from big names that really believe that this is more than just speculation, then this is more than scams. It's just like something that's really powerful and very beautiful. And yeah, I hope we look back at this and say, wow, this was a special moment. We were living history.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, Bernardo, again, thanks for joining. Those of you in Europe, Bitcoiners in Europe, check out Lastbit. I can tell that they're focusing on making Bitcoin something that's easy to use and interoperates with the euros as easily as possible. So if you're trying to live on Bitcoin, I can't imagine you can't use Lastbit Card or Lastbit Lite. They sound like fantastic products.
Thanks, CK. It was a pleasure chatting with you.